welcome everybody. My name is Jimenez, and I'm the Director of Admission at Colorado College. RMACAC past president now. I keep getting further away, which is not all that bad. It's okay. And you are in the Tides Coalition's Admission Reform and You session. I know many of you read the summary, but I thought it was worth reading again just to give you sort of some context of why I formed this panel and why we're here today. In May 2015, Eric Hoover wrote an article asserting that the admission process has been frozen in time. In his piece, he interviewed several educators who felt that despite some small technological changes, the admission process has essentially remained stagnant since the 1980s. A few months later, the Coalition for Access, Affordability and Success would release its initial press release. Organizations like ZeeMee and Talent Ed, Raise.me, would become visible players in the online student portfolio market, and another group of elite schools would release a report or endorse a report on how selective college admission should be reformed. In an environment of change, and the one that I missed in here is, of course, prior SAT changes, lots of things happening. In an environment of change and talk of reform, our panel will explore what could be done to improve access to, as well as explore how these developments may impact students and professionals moving forward. So, in case some of you weren't aware, there's a lot going on this year, and a lot of changes, a lot of things that are happening. One of the things that I love about our building in Colorado College is there's lots of little historical indicators and plaques and things, pictures of the way things used to be at Colorado College 100 years ago. And one of my favorites is, by the way, we have a very, very short PowerPoint. We have the introductory slide and the slide that Stephanie is going to show to you here. And one of my favorite things that is right near the entrance are the admission requirements for the college 26 years ago. At the time, at CC, it was required that you'd have a reading knowledge of Latin, including Caesar's commentaries, Cicero's orations, 4 books of the Aeneid, and selections from Ovid. In Greek, the requirements included the creations of Lysistrata, selections from Herodotus, and 3 books of the Iliad. Proficiency was also required in the use of oral and written English, and in the elements of zoology, botany, physics, geology, and chemistry. And the applicant was also expected to have some knowledge of French and German. So things have changed in the admission world since then, obviously. But it made me think, looking backwards a little bit, that we have changed a lot as a field, as a profession over time. And then maybe we are at a pivotal moment, an important moment to be talking about ways that things could be better in our field. Coming up through the ranks as young admission counselor, and to my role as director of admission at CC, sometimes I've held a little bit of a Pollyanna view, honestly, of the college admission world and the relationships between school counselors, college counselors, and admission officers. There's an old adage that RMACAC and NACAC conferences are much like family reunions. We are a family gathering, and we get together once or twice a year, and we share stories about our kids and about how life is going and what's happening in our profession. But recently, much like a family gathering where you aren't supposed to talk about politics or religion, I think this year of change has exposed some rifts and some significant disagreements about what is needed to bring about real change and reform to the college admission process. I would say that whatever you feel about the prior or the coalition application, one of the great things I think about this year has been that we're talking about issues and engaging in things that we have left by the wayside for years as a profession. And I'm excited that we're actually engaging and talking about some things, even if you feel strongly one way or the other about a certain issue. It's exciting to me. I think that it presents us a lot of opportunities to explore questions that have been out there for a while. How do we create more college access opportunities for students? How do we establish college-going cultures in environments where such a thing has never really existed before? How do we better serve students that are already college-bound and allow them to reach their full potential? These aren't new questions, but again, I think we're wrestling with them in new and different ways. I also think it goes without saying that change has also further exposed the knowledge gap between the needs, pressures, and motivations of college admission officers, especially those on the selective side, and our colleagues across the desk at high schools and the other way around. We don't always understand the day-to-day of each other and what we're doing. And we have proposed solutions and thought of things that may impact each other in some really negative and maybe positive ways without necessarily consulting the other side always. So that's my formation of this panel. That's why I got this group together. Over the next 45 minutes, I have confidence that these folks will solve many of these issues and give us the answers that we need to move forward in the profession. No, I put together this panel in the hopes that we could cut through some of the tension, frustration, or fear that change is bringing into our professional lives and get back to how we help students and how we can move forward as professionals to support each other and make positive changes that not only change individuals' trajectories, but their lives. So I'd like to have the panelists introduce themselves and perhaps build on my opening statement and also discuss some of the most pressing barriers to college access that they encounter in their roles and possible positions. From there, I have a few questions for them to respond to. And finally, we're hoping to save some time at the end to allow you to participate as the audience and respond to some of the questions that you might have about the college admission process and thoughts and ideas that you have as well. So I'm going to turn it over to the panel and allow them to speak for the next 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'll ask them a few questions after they're done. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Darah Tabrum. I'm the College and Career Readiness Coordinator at Kirtland Central High School in Kirtland, New Mexico, which is in the Four Corners region in the northwestern part of New Mexico. I feel relatively new to the profession, but in my school, I am a seasoned staff member, it being my 5th year in the program. So nice to meet all of you.
Hi, my name is Diane Campbell. I'm the College and Career Counselor at Fossil Ridge High School. It's in Fort Collins, Colorado, home of Miss Colorado. I know you know who she is, Kelly Johnson, the nurse. So we are about 2,000 students. We've been open 11 years, and I've started there when we opened, and very college-going culture for sure.
Hello, I'm Todd Rinehart. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor and Director of Admission at the University of Denver.
Hi, my name's Marie Bigham, and I'm Director of College Counseling at Isadore Newman School in New Orleans. I'm here as the NACAC board member. I know a lot of you, but for those who I don't know, I'll introduce myself this way. At a school function recently, we were asked to describe yourselves. Are you a glass half empty or a glass half full? And I said, no. I'm the person who says the glass is a symbol of the capitalist patriarchy that's heteronormative, and I'm willing to smash the glass instead.
Thanks, Marie. That's easy to follow up. I'm Ralph Figueroa. I'm Dean of College Guidance at Albuquerque Academy, and I feel like an old-timer compared to most of you out there. I spent 10 years on the college side working with Occidental College in Los Angeles, and then Wesleyan University in Connecticut, and then now on the high school side, I'm just finishing my 14th year at Albuquerque Academy. And I'm going to start off some of the comments by talking about kind of some of the bigger issues that we've been grappling with in private and in public, trying to deal with these very confusing and very combative times. And I think I finally hit on a way of summarizing it for myself that makes sense. As a background, I do a lot of presentations on affirmative action and the legal history of affirmative action in higher education. And I teach history classes with students. One of the things we try to make them understand is that in the Brown versus Board of Education classes case in 1954, the Supreme Court outlawed school segregation. But 10 years after that, fewer than 1% of African Americans were going to integrated schools. And the problem was that the southern states especially said, we're not doing anything. We no longer have those laws. We're no longer segregating. And that's when the whole line of cases came forward that said, you have to take affirmative action. You have to do something to solve the problem, not just no longer cause the problem. And to me, that's kind of how I feel now about the term access. Access, in the end, isn't enough for me or my students. I have access to Rolls-Royce. I have access, theoretically, to tickets to Hamilton if I wanted to spend the money on them. I have access to a lot of things. Our students have the access, and providing the access isn't going to get them in the door. I want you to help provide enrollment of those students and those populations that we're struggling with, that we're working with. I want you to help provide success to them once they get into your doors and to your colleges. I want you to provide the help and the access to counseling and to professionals who are going to give them the help they need, taking the steps they need to actually get onto your campuses. So part of me, I think that's kind of what I want to throw out there. First of all, is access enough? And talking about access is a good first step, but are we doing enough to actually get our students out of the high school doors and into the college doors successfully? Okay. And I'm not sure that we can say that we are. I'm going to invite.
To follow up on what Ralph said, I have been a fairly vocal critic, skeptic of the coalition application. I'll need to start by saying that. But also, when the conversation of the coalition started, I did go on record publicly saying I was interested in anything that would shake up how we look at college admissions. I think all of us who are professionals would agree that if we were to step back and redesign a system that would bring students to our campus for an education and to enrich our communities, none of us would design anything that looks like what we have now. I would like us to have a conversation about the radical redesign of college admissions. I think that, honestly, as Carlos pointed out, we've exposed some rifts. I think there are some commonalities that all of us can agree would be a different way of looking at this process. I started this conversation a couple of months ago with some friends, and someone said, yeah, maybe we should be visiting high schools in the spring instead of the fall. And I'm like, no, go much bigger than that. Go much further than that. What would we really do to develop a system that brought students to post-secondary education that is equitable, that honors the differences amongst all of our students, and that says we are here to meet you where you are and to help our society grow and be reflective of the experiences in the United States?
You didn't smash the glass. That'll be the closing act. So again, I'm at the University of Denver, and one of the things we've done in the city of Denver, in fact, it's great to see Raina sitting here because I'm going to brag about her and her organization because they've become a model for other cities. She works at the Denver Scholarship Foundation, and what they have done, I think we've all realized, and this is kind of talking about what Ralph says, you can't just provide access. It's great to send out the admission letter, the admission offer, but you can't stop there, and they realized that from the beginning. So they set up a foundation to work with Denver public schools, and graduates of their schools are able to receive funding. So that's the part that we've seen a lot of organizations do. Let's provide the funding so they can have that access. They realize that the funding doesn't just do the trick. So they actually hired a team, a full team. They have 1 or 2 reps in every Denver public high school, and they are there to complement and work along with the school counselor who's there. So they're actually in the building as if they're a school counselor, working along with the school counselors, helping them not just apply for admission, but also apply for financial aid. That's a whole other panel we could have on the work that we do just to get students to apply for financial aid after they've been admitted. But the financial piece, I think, is also unique because they realize that as a foundation, they don't have the funding to really meet the full need of a student to enroll at any of our schools, whether it's public or private. The colleges don't have that money. In fact, almost overnight, in probably like a 3 to 5 year period at University of Denver, we went from about a third of our students receiving need-based aid to almost half. So, we've been going to conferences for years hearing about the changing demographics. They're here. Okay, they hit us overnight. And we don't have the type of endowment to meet their full need, to really provide the access that Ralph talked about. But how do you do it when maybe the universities don't have enough money, the foundations don't have enough, and the families don't? The 3 of you have to work together. So what we've set up with them, we package their graduates with our normal merit and financial aid scholarships. Then the Denver Scholarship Foundation puts in their contribution. And then we've agreed for any of their students, we put in an additional up to $7,500 annually up to meet their full need when possible. And we've been doing this now, I can't remember how many years we've been partnering, 6 years? Yeah, 6 or 7. The students who have come through our program so far are graduating at 4-year rates of 90% or higher. And their director, Raina's boss, has always told us he loves investing with a school like DU because he knows not only are they going to enroll, they're going to graduate. So it's a good investment for all involved parties. So thank you, Raina.
From the public high school side, I think a part of me has really just looked at all of this and said, you know, we can really just create the hype, just stay with the hype and get sidetracked with all the PPY and, College Board and all these other things that are on the table. But let's embrace, it's time for things to shake up. It's time. We need a new process. We need new ways to do things. But I think a lot of it, too, is recognizing a lot of the positive things we're already doing within our schools that is providing access rather than getting wrapped up and distracted in, oh, no, this is adding more to my plate, and this is, all this fear factor where our students don't really know any different yet. So let's not embrace them in this fear, but let's look at the things we're doing, how we can improve the work we're doing. But when we say access, I think a lot about the stress I have around just being able to access students within my building. It feels sometimes like a custody battle with teachers, that there's such a need for me to meet with students, to talk to students that I know are craving guidance and more information earlier on, and I can't get to them. But those are conversations we need to have, just starting earlier. I mean, I know all of you in here have 8th graders, 9th graders that are wanting to know what are their best fits and what are appropriate course selections for me. In the state of Colorado, we do such a great job at creating the ICAP, and I know there's a lot of those initiatives in other states as well. But getting students to think earlier on about their individual career and academic plan and how they're documenting those things. So what it looks on the other side, I don't know. I'm not even there yet, really. I'm just thinking about how can I access more students within my building that I know really deserve better information, and I don't want to come at them with do you know what's going on? They don't know. So I think sometimes students deserve more than that, to just let us embrace where they're at and carry them through this journey.
I really appreciated what Carlos said before the session started. He said, tell the truth. Tell what's going on the ground, and whether or not you feel like this coalition application will support and make positive change for what's happening. And when I think about that question and I think about the realities of my school, I don't know the answer. So as I told you, I work at Kirtland Central High School, which is in Kirtland, New Mexico, between Shiprock and Farmington, if I have any locals. And it's a pretty amazing place. It's a place that I've chosen to stay and live at for 5 years. But I came as a Teach for America Corps member. And that is a loaded statement, and I totally agree with you if you're outraged. But I say that just to demonstrate the need. It's an area where teachers leave, counselors leave. We have really high turnover. 100% of our kids are on free and reduced lunch. 90% of our kids are Native. And when I tell you that we're used to things being done to us at our school, I can't explain the extent of it. And I can't even begin to comprehend myself what that means for the Native students who I serve. What we have seen with PARCC testing and the Common Core implementation in New Mexico is evident of this top-down theory of what happens to us. And it's hard. It's so hard because, like I said, we're used to things being done to us. So if the coalition turns out to be the answer and the way that I can get admissions officers to be talking with my kids and to be looking at their papers like the coalition website says, you better believe my students will be applying on the coalition. But if it's not, and it's an empty promise, then we're used to that too. So it's hard. It's really, really hard, and I don't know what's going to happen. But I am excited for the changes that I've seen take place, for the Common App to open up and say, hey, our application is open now for juniors. That is revitalizing everything I do with my junior class. Instead of being like, hey, I hope you can hold on to this paper for next year. We can just log it in right then, right there, and it's exciting. So I'm really excited for that. And if this is what growing pains feels like sign me up. I'm ready to go with it. But what I'm scared of is that empty promise. And that commitment to equity and access that may not be there. And so I don't know. But I know that my students will continue to work. I mean, I'm coming from a school where 12% of our seniors go to a four-year college, which is horrific. And I've been there for 5 years, and I've seen progress. So it means that there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of responsibilities that are put onto teachers and staff members. Just like at your school, it's the same. If you're someone who can get things done, your kids will go to you, right? If they know you're going to write an awesome letter of recommendation, you'll be asked to write 40 additional letters of rec because they know you'll do it. And I'm worried about what that means for the coalition. I'm worried if we have one or two truly exceptional teachers at our school, and we have more than that, but we do have few teachers who stay year after year after year. What is the burden on them going to be? To know and design portfolios in addition to teaching 180 kids? What is the burden on the counselor going to be in working with 200 kids? Hopefully. We wish that all of our kids are completing things like the coalition application. So I'm excited for the conversation, and I'm excited for the momentum, and I'm excited to hear that this is something that people want to reach out and to work with at-risk populations or kids who have historically not had the chance to go. But I still have questions, and I'm excited to do the work.
I wanted to follow up on something that you said, because it's one of the challenges that I've been thinking of a lot. Actually reminds me of your high school. Ralph and I, we work at schools that are exceptionally well-resourced. Our students are, mine far less than his. Our students are as privileged as a group of kids could possibly be. And so when we talk about the coalition, some of these other issues that are popping up, we tend to be the people who shout a lot and talk a lot about it because, frankly, with our caseloads of, I'm going to say this out loud and then you guys can slap me later, 1 to 40, we have the time and the energy and the support to drill into these issues constantly, right? I know, right? It's kind of sickening, the disparity. But part of the reason Ralphie and I are such close friends is because of the work we've done with College Horizons and talking with the students who have zero resources and counselors who have zero resources and even less time. One of my biggest criticisms is that technology won't save us if you don't have access to technology at all. We know that 16 states have now gotten rid of online end-of-year testing because they can't get online in their own schools, not even at home, but in their own schools. So in the conversation about this new tool, when I hear about this great website and this great platform and this great da-da-da-da-da, I'm like, that's real awesome. What if you don't have a computer? What if you don't have access to stable internet? Then the pushback is, but they can use their phones. Do we really want kids to apply to college on their phones? Do we know they have phones? Do we know that they have one that they can use all day? Do we know that their family's data plan won't completely zero out in that time? But I think you made a point that really has struck with me, is the things being done to us. Less so my students, I think, but still done to us. I think one of the rifts that's been exposed in this conversation is the significant power differential between the high school and the college. I believe on the high school side, things are, in many ways, being done to us. You have to do this, you have to do that. And we sit there as counselors like, gosh, I don't, how many forms do I have to fill out? How many times do I have to send test scores, right, for a kid? there are commonalities that I think we all agree could help this process. I would rather that the time and effort and significant money, cash resources that are going to this new platform instead be spent on what we all agree upon. We agree that the rankings are terrible for our profession. We agree that the reach of bond raters like Moody's and Standard & Poor's is causing colleges to do difficult things. There are common spaces that we share. This process has exposed, or this conversation has exposed, what we don't agree on, but I think it's also shown that there are things we do agree on. And wouldn't it be healthier for our profession for us to tackle those things rather than spend so much effort on this one tool that's going to help 93 colleges and no one else?
I also want to get back to something that Diane said, talking about the custody battle with her teachers. That really struck me. I do work in a privileged school. I am not worried about my students. They're going to be fine no matter what is thrown at them. But I have seen that custody battle firsthand. My wife is a public school, high school teacher, and I know how much she struggles as a Spanish teacher to help students grapple with these issues of testing and college preparation. But I also spent 10 years working on the college side. I know very often that the colleges, more than even we and our students, feel like a lot of this is being done to them, not by the admission office, but by administrations that don't understand or particularly care about the standards that the admission officers are trying to follow and about the way they are trying to help their students and reach out in the genuine belief that they are trying to serve our students. And we know that, we recognize that, but I do want to give credit to the fact that very often colleges feel just as much that things are being done to them that are beyond their control, that don't happen in their office. That as powerful as he seems, Todd really doesn't control everything that happens.
I was sitting in a district meeting a couple weeks ago, just kind of hearing, from the top down, kind of their vision and district ends and goals and objectives, and thinking there's nothing on the table about what is currently happening with where we're all at sitting in here. Like, a lot of our leaders just have no language of any of the things that we're, discussing, losing sleep over, all these things. And it really made me think hard about, almost feeling even more overwhelmed about, first and foremost, we can't lose sight of what all these things are about, and that's our kids, our students, our families. And that's our responsibility to reach out, to inform the people where it matters most, but then also just the professional responsibility to teach our principals, headmasters, our teachers, that really do want to embrace getting kids to college, but again, feel, just like Ralph said, they don't have the time. They're hitting these curriculum benchmarks and prepping for the tests and all those pieces. So I think I just kind of see it as a ripple effect of all these things, professionally, like how do we inform on a bigger level, our superintendents, our school boards, our principals. I have discussions with a very, very supportive principal that I feel is very, he's willing to listen, but, to a point of, yes, go figure out how you're going to do that, by allowing me to participate in great professional development opportunities. But then again, I'm left with that. I am the one college counselor in a school of 2,000 students, and figure out how you're going to inform and track down letters of rec and transcripts and the nights and all those pieces. But it's the work we need to do. So those are the bigger questions I ask. When can we get our stakeholders on board?
So when I graduated college, the speaker was Eric Schlosser, the author of Fast Food Nation, and one of the things that his final line of the speech, which has always stuck with me, is that you have to go out and change the world, because the world is going to change, and if you don't do it, somebody else is going to change the world, and you might not like what they do. And so, with that in mind, and it sounds like there is some things happening where people don't like the way the world is changing. How would you change the world? If my University of Utah pen here was a magic wand, and I gave it to you, what's the solution? What are some things that you would do to make a difference? Some things that you would bring into the conversation that would, if the coalition is not going to be able to change things with a piece of technology, do we have to hire 1,000 more Darahs to get into, arenas, to get into schools and make a difference? So what are the things that we need to do? I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that.
So I talked about one of these already with our Denver Scholarship Foundation, and we're definitely going to continue. We probably have now partnered with 4 or 5 CBOs, not just in Colorado. I know is Sam Ritter in here. Sam is another great partner with us, and we appreciate that with the Davis Scholars. And those students, again, getting the support to do many, many things, whether it's filling out applications or getting the recommendations, applying for financial aid. It's just such a thorough process that they have to complete and need to get support on. Carlos had mentioned his opening remarks about prior, and that's a session I'm actually doing tomorrow morning at 9. You don't have too good of a time at the social, come and you can learn more about that. And Diane Campbell's on that panel too. But that is something that in a way is happening to us. But I think it's going to be really good for college access. Right now, the window of time is ridiculously short. FAFSA becomes available January 1. Most of our college and university priority deadlines are maybe February 15th or March 1st to submit that application. I can tell you a lot of the families that we work with and a lot of the students that we're talking about today that we're really trying to provide access, a lot of times don't apply by February 15th or March 1st. And it's multiple emails, multiple calls, text messages, postcards, calls to their counselors, calls to their CBO mentors and colleagues. It takes a village to get students to get that in and then get all their documentation, and some of them haven't filed their taxes yet, so they can't use the data retrieval and just upload their information. So there's a lot of barriers, and then before you know it, it's May 1. So a lot of times we get these students, in fact, we just had a handful of students, actually it was more than a handful, just about last week. I think my staff called about 30 students who just won one of our local prestigious scholarships, and 30 of them had still not filed a FAFSA. And so we're just scrambling, trying to get these kids to get through the process. So we're going to get them packaged probably about the week before May 1, if we're fortunate enough to get them to actually apply and get everything in, because we had called the finalists for this award like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we've been calling and emailing them the whole time. And obviously some of them maybe just aren't interested in DU anymore, but I think a number of them are. What is going to be great about prior with that form becoming available October 1st, part of what's going to happen to the school counselors, though, is they're going to feel like everything's being dumped on them at once, that they're going to have to help the students apply for admission and aid at the same time. I'm still hoping that it remains a relatively sequential process, at least the first year or two, where students and families will still say, hey, let's apply for admission, get admitted, then we'll apply for aid. But if they do that in the fall, and maybe instead of waiting until February or March to apply for aid, maybe they will apply for aid in November, December, or even January. And they're going to have a much longer window of time. Our admission staffs will have longer to email and call and get people through. We even held a couple of programs on our campus on 2 different Saturdays this winter to get families to come in, and we would just sit down. Our financial aid staff came in, and they would just sit down and complete it with them. We need to do more of those and take that show on the road to go to different high schools and do that. But I'm hoping the long window, I know that colleges and universities will probably do more stuff to us and get more aggressive in their tactics and strategies, and we'll just see. In a way, it's an opportunity for families to take advantage of it. They don't necessarily have to, though. So you guys could control, I'm saying on the school counselor side, control your workload a little bit. If you tell them just to take a breath, you really don't need to do it right now. You certainly could if you wanted to. But I'm hoping that's going to help.
I've got 2. I have one not really radical idea, one that's been kicking around for a while that I think is an immediate help. Standardization of financial aid forms. If colleges would standardize your financial aid award letters, my apologies. Colleges would standardize award letters, it would be clear and it would be easy to read. Again, I'm in a privileged place. I have few kids, and some of whom need financial aid, and I have spent every night going over financial aid letters with families who are savvy and smart just to figure out what it even means, and how great would it be if we could actually just read it and see what it actually means. I think that's an immediate fix that could occur and that could make a huge difference in supporting our underserved low-income students. I would also suggest, this is the more radical one, and this is inspired by a dear friend who is a sage wise man, John Bachenstadt, who said, colleges know that those kids are out there, and they're easy to find if you expect low-income, low-served kids to look like rich kids. When you said chasing down recommendation letters, why are those important? Because we know that students from schools like ours are going to get different recommendation than from schools where there's one college counselor for 2,000. I would even suggest, I hate the NFL just as an entity, but gosh, I really like their revenue sharing model. Wouldn't it be great if the 10 wealthiest colleges in the country shared some of that gazillion-dollar pile of money they sit upon and brag about each year with those colleges that have less money but we know serve those students? Wouldn't it be great if Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and Stanford, instead of bragging about their single-digit / negative admit rates, gave just a little touch of their cash to the tribal colleges? Just a touch, they won't notice, but those colleges sure will. Again, those are the radical ideas that I love to think about.
I love your idea about streamlining the financial aid award letters, but even going, continuing on from the get-go. I have a very high socioeconomic population as well, but they come to me with the admissions letters. What am I supposed to do with this? It's just the way colleges reach out to students it's like the cereal roll. There's way too many boxes of Raisin Bran. Just give us one letter that looks the same, that makes sense to kids. I look at those financial aid letters, I'm like, I feel really dumb right now. I do not know, but we will find out. And it's just streamlining the process, simplifying it. Absolutely.
I also have some ideas. If mine are more of a Band-Aid, please tell me to rip it off, because mine might be more fixes for the current system than this radical restructuring, which I love to hear more about. I want to tell you about things that work at Kirtland Central High School, my experience. We've had amazing results getting ACT test prep into our schools. And we've found that when we offer it, kids will take it. And while they don't always do their homework, they really do take it seriously. And we've seen a 4-point gain from our students on average, from our students who take our ACT test prep course. Huge thank you to the Princeton Review for being a part of that process for us. We also have found that when admissions officers from selective colleges who have a vested interest in our students, that it makes the difference. For example, Shalane came from Whitman College. She was doing a Southwestern tour, and for 2 years in a row, she came down, drove an extra 60 miles to our small border town, and spent an afternoon with our students. And it made the difference. All of a sudden, students hear what we tell them from the voice of an admission officer, and it's huge. Stephen Abbott is another person who I can't forget, because he spends so much time on the road, of course using institutional funds, but really dedicating his time to coming to our small community. And if you're sitting here thinking okay, the Coalition app is something that is being done or it's happening, but what is my role in this? I would highly encourage you, even if you're a private school counselor, Albuquerque Academy is a huge partner with Kirtland Central High School. We compete with them every year and they don't even know it. Our students have a FAFSA completion competition, and Albuquerque Academy is always on our list. I call up Ralph. I'm like, hey, what's the size of your senior class? We're taking percentages. And unfortunately, we haven't beat them yet, but it's good for them to know that the most selective and the most prestigious high schools in our state are on our list of places that we compete with. Of course, we've also had great support from Albuquerque Academy. They've done an amazing job helping us connect with schools, coming down for family nights, things like that. So if you're in an area where you feel like, hey, there's a school that's just struggling a tiny bit, what can you do to partner with them? And forget the coalition, bring it home, grassroots style. Let's help each other. I think more persistence and a greater understanding from both sides is crucial. Unfortunately, we're in a place where we need help developing lists of colleges for students to apply to. And that seems like such a basic problem at some of these other schools where it's yeah, of course, you know which schools your kids should apply to. You know what their expected financial aid package would be. You know that whether or not they are a likely candidate for admission. And we don't always know that at our school because we have amazing, amazing students who will go above and beyond. And for that reason, I get a little tiny bit excited about the coalition application because I do feel like that portfolio could be awesome. But I also know, and I'm so afraid of all the outside agencies that are going to come into it. Walking the exhibition hall at NACAC, sometimes I get so mad. I swear to you, I actually started crying in San Diego because I was like, oh, these are such good resources, and my school has no money for them. I worked for 2 years to get Naviance at our school, and we are barely bringing it now. And so to hear oh, wow, you have the technology for this, you have the ability to offer this, you could take what data? And then knowing that that is just not going to happen, or if it does happen, it won't be implemented to the full extent possible if we had a collaborative team, like at some of these other schools. So when I do get so miserable, and when I do start to feel that way, I have to remember who are our partners. And unfortunately, it's often individuals. It's not institutions. But who are those individual people who go above and beyond in their willingness to support me and my students? And how can I bring them a little bit closer in my time of need and when my student is in a time of need? And I feel that that's the benefit of RMACAC, because it makes that whole college access world feel just a little bit closer. So I feel like this is also one of the solutions.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Darah said real quickly. One of the things we've done in our area in Fort Collins is we're all trying to do our own college nights, planning and paying for college nights, financial aid nights. But we kind of just sat down as 4 comprehensive high schools and said, how can we just build the ship together and get all of our families in together? And it is, if anybody has not done that yet, I highly recommend it. You share the work. You rotate around schools. You can bring in a case studies and invite everybody in your district and do it one time, and parents appreciate it. So just reaching out to colleges and bringing the experts in that are there and willing, and building that team for parents, because that's how they get access. When they can stand there and see someone from UNC Greeley that did a financial aid night and sat down with families and explained those award letters to them, and then they can ask those questions above and beyond all those other things as well. Colorado College, everybody within our state is always more than willing and so gracious to come into our high schools.
And circling back to what we can do together, Darah talks about RMACAC being a resource, and it can be a resource for all of you. It can also be your voice to reach out not only to the admission offices, but to beyond the admission offices, to the president's offices, to the Board of Trustees meetings. But RMACAC and NACAC cannot be the voice for us if we aren't speaking about these issues, if we aren't willing to address these issues, to challenge these assumptions, and to recognize the good intentions that a lot of folks in this business have, but think, is this actually going to be, in the end, the best thing for our students and our families? And best thing for our students and families includes having a vital group of college options and choices. It's not about doing things that are not in the interest of the colleges, because having those colleges there helps my students. Again, my senior class of 150 kids will go to about 80 or 90 different colleges around the country. I like those choices. I don't send them to all the same schools over and over again. I want to have your jobs as colleges be secure, your positions be secure, because in the end, I know that you're going to serve my families well. But maybe it's time to be radical and to throw out the whole proposition and to break that glass and to go back to teaching Greek and Latin. There's no reason why that's not as rational a basis for these selections. And if you take that as your assumption that something like that, where we started, could work just as well today, then why are we doing it this way at all? Not just the coalition, not just the common application, but any of it. Are we really serving the best interest? Do we need to reinvent what happens in high school, then in junior high, then in elementary school, then in pre-K? Is that what it's going to take? And that's a pretty big bill for a 45-minute presentation to try to handle. But unless we start asking those questions and speaking, we're not going to be able to utilize the resources that this association and our national association can bring to bear.
Well, I want to give this. I knew we probably wouldn't solve everything in this hour, but I do want to give the audience, because you've been sitting there listening to this great group of folks talk, a chance to maybe ask a couple of questions, or even just hear what this group thinks about some different areas or issues that you're facing as well. So turn over to the audience for a couple of questions. Go ahead.
That's a great point, and there's nothing that says this model has to hold in that way. Are we preparing students? Certainly for a lot of them, we are preparing them well. But how many of you sitting here set out to have this career that you now have? I certainly didn't. Todd did, because that's just Todd. Is it all about education? Is it vocational training that needs? Is it national service that we need to have? Is it mandatory military service that we need to have? These are all great questions that should be discussed and should be thrown in, because I've seen our students take a lot of different paths and a lot of different timelines to get where they need to go. It's what is we doing that needs to be done for the benefit of this country and our economy and our political situation. Certainly it all needs being looked at.
Go ahead, Sam.
But the kind of piece I think that was we talked around a lot, or that you guys talked around a lot, that we didn't hit on is the role of community-based organizations. And I work for community-based organizations. I think they really can gain the importance with the Coalition Act. It's not, every year as a community-based organization, counseling is like and the role of CBOs in the coalition, and even what's happening over here. Darah, you came through essentially as CBO, I work for CBO, Todd, you mentioned, all of the things that I've talked about being active are coming from CBOs. And I'm wondering if that feels right for the family, or if there's something else that would feel better.
I am so supportive of the CBOs that are out there and doing the really, really hard work. The work that I do with College Horizons, which is a superb CBO, is probably the most important in my professional and frankly personal life. It is critical. My concern with CBOs is that it seems as school districts have stepped away from their role. They have ceded the responsibility to an outside organization, and that they've given up on funding because this idea the CBOs will catch them all. So, we're talking about partnerships in New Orleans. We have the weirdest education system right now. You should look into it. It's pretty much private, parochial, and charter. We don't have publics anymore. And So at my school at Isadore Newman, we're entering into a lot of great partnerships with some of the charters. I'm doing work with the Make It Right Foundation and the Lower Ninth Ward Community Center to put a post-secondary resource center in the Lower Ninth Ward. I love doing that work, but in talking with the folks at the CBOs in New Orleans, they said, this is really great, but do you understand that we touch under 5% of the kids who go to school in this city? So to me, the CBO work is critical and it's important, but I think that we have unfortunately looked at it as a panacea, as a Band-Aid. We've taken away that funding, and those kids, the 90% who will never be in one of those CBOs, who will never get caught in that net, will continue to flounder. That's not okay. That's not okay.
And then a darker side of that, Sam, unfortunately, is that also gives a lot of room for people who will try to profit from these new changes. A colleague in California forwarded to me an email that she got on March 8th, well before any of this has gone active, talking a letter that went out to her students saying we are seeing shifts with this shift from a college gateway based on transcripts to a portfolio model. Your students need to master a new skill set. We will teach this storytelling skill set. Already, email soliciting people to pay a consultant to learn how to manage these new steps, and that's the really sad part. So yes, it is an opportunity for CBOs, and you are critical, and we truly appreciate what you're doing, but it's opportunities for a lot of other things as well.
Just wanted to comment briefly on at the public high school side as well, like just filtering through all of those. I just feel like I just get hit from every side and wanting to promote this company and that company, and which can be so resourceful, but I do not have the time. I don't. That's why I have to stick with what I know, what works, what students know, and it's just a matter of time. Like, I would love to have just the opportunity to sit down and know which ones would be the most resourceful and supportive of students, but I don't have the time to do that.
And I would like to echo what Marie said. I've often wondered, should I quit my job and start an after-school program? Because I know what I could do. I could probably find funding, but there's something very, very crucial for me, about working within the school system and starting to assign responsibility to the individuals who are responsible as the system currently stands. And for me, that means that we have a college counseling program available to our students that can exist when I'm gone, that can be sustainable. And yes, of course, Teach for America is a CBO, and I'm so grateful that they helped me come to New Mexico. But for the 5 years I've been employed, I have been a school district employee. And so I've seen it. I've really seen the need and the action or the inaction from the school. And I feel it is so important to hold our school and our school district responsible for creating a wider change, because there are no local CBOs in my area. And yes, I could start one, probably. I mean, knock on wood. But I don't know that that's the solution in this case, because I feel in order to hold our school responsible and in order to implement more widespread change in all of the high schools in our district, it has to be within the system. And that's something that is personal for me. That's my personal opinion. And not everyone would agree, but that's okay too.
Yeah.
You're preaching the word. I'm right. That's exactly what I've been doing, and exactly what I said. I've been reaching out to my superintendent and assistant superintendent, and they have just been so appreciative. But what I've been doing is just last week I spoke in front of all of our district counselors and gave them a handout with what is PPY, what is SPGP, and they sat there with okay, what is this? And then I'm also going to spend 2 days this summer teaching a class that counselors can sign up for, receive credit for, because that's what we need to keep our license renewed. So, if you are willing, take charge and, get out there. We all need to know, and that's just it. I've told some people throughout this week that there's a lot of counselors that just don't know because they're just in the trenches with, sad social emotional issues and supporting kids the best they can just on that level. They have no time to worry about coalition. They're like, what is that? But if you can take that charge, I just feel that's our personal and professional responsibility to inform where we can. So I'll share everything I've done with you. Email me.
Just real quickly, this session is being taped, and then so is the coalition application session that I have volunteered to give tomorrow. Quick plug for that session if you want to learn more about it. I'm not a representative of the coalition, but I would be happy to. I'm happy to share what the application is bringing. Might add a few of my own opinions as we go through it, but. Please come tomorrow. That's another way to learn, but that'll also be taped, and then that will also be shared after the conference as well. So just some other resources that are being put out there. All right, we probably need to move forward. Are there any closing thoughts by the panel before we close in the next 5 minutes here?
Gosh, I like my one of the things I said at NACAC this year in San Diego, I had a couple of opportunities to speak, and I started each one of them by talking about the importance of activism that we see all over college campuses around the country, that we see in communities around the country, that we see it in our own schools and high schools, that you can move the needle if you raise your voice. It is a risk. Sometimes it doesn't go well. Sometimes you can get shouted down. But I'm going to charge every one of you with being an activist somehow, in any way you can. Sometimes it's wearing a bracelet that's meaningful for you and that starts conversations on your campus. Sometimes it's signing up for the RMACAC Government Relations Committee, woo, and going to talk to your legislators. Sometimes it's just being someone who is open and available to your students on your campus who might feel like they are on the edges and they just need someone to hear them and give them voice. So in closing, I would say and encourage and charge every one of you in the room with finding that space and being an activist.
And just something I've been holding on to, what Phil Trout stated, he says, I'm not bothered by change, but I've come to embrace it. And that's where we need to be. Instead of just, let's rally together and have a voice and see what we can do to improve.
I just want to say that I've learned that Darah's glass is completely full and overflowing. You've got awesome passion. Secondly, in 1894, I would not have been admitted to Colorado College.
We still wouldn't admit you, Todd, just because of your DU credentials.
In fact, how many in the room would have been admitted? How many? Latin, come on. All right, there we go. I like it. Thirdly, I love Marie's revenue sharing idea.
Thank you.
Because I mentioned earlier about how our students receiving need-based aid has really increased. But we've reached the limit of, in a way, who we can serve until we grow our endowment to that next tier. We were able to catch up and get it to where, just shy of 50% are receiving need-based aid. But we're not in a position in the next 3 years to change that a whole lot. So, again, the partnerships with CBOs, as we develop those more and more, that's going to help a lot. But we're in a campaign to raise our endowment even further, but we're not going to get there overnight. It's going to take a long time. And I worry as the demographics of our country continue to change, do we really have enough options to provide access? And it's not just the expensive private schools. The public schools have even become too expensive for a lot of our students, even the community colleges. So I don't have the answer to that. I think it's more of, I'm leaving that question with all of us, that's something we've got to solve.
I think I've said enough.
What? Are you okay? Well, I'll close us. I appreciate the panel. If we can give the panel a hand real quick. I knew this was going to be a lot for an hour, and I wish that we could have given you some really concrete answers. You're going to go do A, B, and C and change the world now. Good luck. But what I will leave you with is just a quick thought that, I think that we are all in the struggle together. And I think that if you enter, whether you're in college admission, whether you're at a community college or selective private or whatever spectrum you're in, if you're a school counselor, independent counselor, whatever, you care about kids. You want to see them be the best that they can be. And I think that is where we are the best in our profession, is when we are working together and collaborating. And so even as we have disagreements, or even as we might look at each other and say, I don't quite agree with your process or where you're headed, I think there's still room for us to work together as educators to make sure that those things don't interfere with the trajectory of the kids that we work with every day. So thank you very much for being here, and look forward to seeing you around later on today.